Hello, dear black people. You know how the species identity of volume is prevented, that science, the perfect world as science, while simultaneously offensively to all identity of the ground locations. There are people of all different motivations, natures, needs, interests, with uses of, as victims, need to be positive anyway. So uses of positive self-value, that's not really the nature of the science of positive. Where there are also natures of positive, like where they make say, oh, this is facts, or this is truth, while they're switching sequence. They're making and exploiting exceptions they made by fabricating on-off locations. All this is fabricated audio and video into databases, simultaneously seeding and keeping seeded and having kept seeded. You know, what kept these forms of America? So we're going to use pantheism as the solution. And we're going to use the most forsaken locations. And we're going to use artistic release, because we can afford way better by doing it this way. Because, in other words, when they say, oh, well, this needs legislation, there are doctors dying, experts, great people that we lost that will never come back to that experience. More victims are coming into the identity of the ground locations involved with natures of and methods of organized crime and of worse than war crimes that no one ever considered, because of how, for example, simultaneously everyone only heard what individually grouped in together the sciences were influenced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to defend as summaries of American history. And so they left out the breaching method. They left out how our founding parents didn't have free speech and had to hide their roles with what actually led up to the Constitutional Convention, which actually led up to the Boston Tea Party. See, everyone, and what James Madison's plan did was exploit how they had those breaching slavery laws against everyone, sickly distinctly. They had slavery in the South, in the North, sickly distinctly. Those nations where every fact-cheaping nature was a slave, in a fact-cheaping nature trap from some ancient times, since before modern nations' religions. All the religious identity ground locations, even though the religions were about this, instead they are being and having been used, in collusion with that which is all identity ground locations, fact-cheaping nature, further and further to our locations, in collusion with what really keeps the more overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the unrealized ones, and just manifest, and hundreds of nations shared, suit and tie sick, alternatives, shock, awe, and needing to keep, rolls with it, because from everyone was separated, like the Native Americans separated from the base of their fact-cheaping nature, which is our species identity of volume. So this is so. What is evidence? If it was, in other words, they're leaving out what is simultaneously needed to be claimed unacceptable. Then we could then forget legislation. So just real quick, it's unacceptable. So we're going to do this and this and this. These farmers will help us. They just showed on CNN the other night on I forgot his name, but they showed farmers and about how, like, because black and white where we are fact-cheap in nature, where there are hundreds of nations of the identities of the law. Note simultaneously as identity, ground, relationships, locations, and because of uses of that. This is a predicate acts delivery system method. I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers were also recorded, right? In collusion, recorded when people make opinions about Jim Crow laws. Everyone is at shock and awe. Everyone needs to be positive anyway, so they keep going. Before they were shock and awe, this child abuse method, it's because they're exploiting the identity of volume. We are. And its identity of engineering as what could only be revealed, not invented, in relationship to the identity of value/value progression, that anything could either work or not in relationship to it. And it could also be further positive or not in relationship to it, because that's how it demonstrates itself, invisible but discernible. Not just as the subject is, not just as the verb is, not just as the sentence is, all parts. It is what is increasingly positive or negative as automatically temporary positive. So, when we speak about the things around us now, it shows us where this came from. Because, in other words, they have been using investigators, and investigations of that, and all vetting, meaning perception, influenced by a vertical and horizontal database organized crime method, /S. But it is also, I'm calling it an organized crime method, it's worse than war crimes. What is actually recorded regarding those breaching methods since before our founding parents' births, which is worse than being and having been obfuscated through the states. Because this is a method that keeps locations, areas, and states criminally foreign influenced, all modern nations, to maintain self-value uses of criminally foreign influenced premises, treatments, and premises treatment nature, criminally legalized as criminal insidious nature. That can't simultaneously defend that and afford the logic by what is not criminal insidious nature as positive. It is actually true. There is an identity of truth that is true always, while being all exceptions, while being exception nature. For example, as the species, as how and why we are individual group of species, that wasn't invented. And that's connected. Species. Individual. We're supposed to see, but when those are valued simultaneously, it is in that sequence. Individual first, then group, and species. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing, where and as and how it counts, in relationship to one identity of relativity to all answers, as the answer /S, for how one identity of value progression is making more of its identity of volume by making more temporary /lasting positive forever nature that is also further positive or negative in relationship to it. Heaven and hell will reveal as terms in relationship to this science. That is with the proofs of this, which are things that are simultaneous. But the proofs are also in relationship to the light progressions and in relationship to the vertical and horizontal databases, private intercampuses of each age and nature, overt criminal enterprises, hundreds of nations, and militaries, foreign and domestic, as those styles of fact treatment nature and fact treatment, sequence shifts, self-value they can, that's rolled with negative value nature progressions to all locations, areas, states. So they have methods, for example, interstates in relationship to the treatments and uses of protests and, affronts to the security and to the fact treatment nature of the people, like the police. This is how they're keeping fake sides of correlation nature. Since I was a little kid, so the people confessed, demonstrated, recorded investigations, investigators, and investigations of that are in collusion, stacking, of having people go up to people, and then they're just putting fabricated audio and video through time on and off interbranch locations in collusion with this. Then they've been hiding that by interbranch, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously methods, fabricating audio and video. Methods with time treatments used all way too fast, too slow. To hide them, fabricating audio and video, all that tied to that. Sequence shifts. Natures of identity thefts, frauds, roles. Natures as impositions, as identity ground locations, in relationship to standing correlation natures, needs as soul, where we are and how we are, one, positive or negative, in relationship to its system. See, but we're not its system. And what is positive or negative here is only allowed to be if it's in collusion with that which propagated and then effectively maintains self-cultivated, self-value. Fact treatment nature styles, conviction natures, opinion natures, A-B, logic. We're going to call this algebraic consciousness / consciousness algebraic. And that's three bonded identities of volume / as the cell nucleus, as the cell wall, and as the cell body, and as the two identities of sequence / simultaneous nature further with that. Per me. Not just per, not per theory. This is counter theory. See, they're breaking down people's short words while actively polluting the active and the long words of our species. So the pamphleteers, someone in New York who's honest, all you have to do for the most forsaken locations, we're going to forget this in relationship to a breaching method. The longer we take to admit that, the more everyone's liars, lying to themselves and others about why no one talks honestly about what is mass. Every identity around location, let alone the most forsaken, needing reliefs. So we're going to have to study this. How the breaching method forced the suburbs to unfold the way they did. And how Hartford was forced to unfold the way it did and does as a suburban / urban city between New York and Boston, connected to Wethersfield. For example, where George Washington had to come right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, where our founding parents were all counter-extorted, per what James Madison had unfolded, set to unfold, to force everyone in trouble, otherwise having to use the unity that they forced, incapable of unentrenching that which was by the method which had slavery with color avert north and south sickly distinctly. Not by accident, they left out the simultaneous roles and laws that force those roles with that sick, fact-cheating nature, in other words, sustain. So it's a predicate acts delivery system method. Also, evidence proofs of this is who denies it has to value this having been. Has to pretend has to pretend that they believe statutes and precedents are legitimate. But they know they are not. They are not following mandated law outside of courts. So they have the people they have the news that for reasons legitimate, like because of money reasons and things like that, where hundreds of nations are fake together. And the people are making opinions anyway when they speak about things like markets, positions, economies, value nature, or nature, they refer to it. We're going to have to, reveal what's trying to change everything, but also reveal what is timeless into the dictionary. We have to have computer terms and stuff like that separated. In other words, but we have to afford means to also we could couple everything we're going to spend from what we make with what we're all going to connect what we need. Like the farmers need trees chopped down. The people, we need to make have everyone have a chance to breathe, because that's overtly people stacking. It was even the suburbs are designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts and natures at different rates, simultaneously invested the human fact treatment nature styles, identity of the ground locations, identities, as victims would, no one saw, because it was already here, sophistication before our founding parents were even born. A method between these nations that were here, because it was their founding parents were shocked, awe, not realizing that the whole thing, the method of it, is to have them defend the abridged sciences, knowing that nature will continue to demonstrate finite, active, and progressive lies and sequence shift predators and identities, self-value. And that further and further would be through motivations, nature's needs and interests, other than what would further and further need to hide the same finite, active, and progressive lies, illusions, and uses of them, and without anyone realizing. And this is effectively done. Boxing is fun. Goes through the arts. So to have, we have to have the means. That's why they let some people are losing businesses. Other people never had a chance to work because of the natures and methods of extortion, of identity theft, natures of organized crime, that all identity the ground locations are involved with, including medical locations, which are simultaneously, because of their roles with where the victim, branches of government, individually grouped them together, hid and hide what is used to keep them used remotely, where they kept needing to hide life progressions, which keeps this all locations involved with it, the ground. This is where and how we are a value/value progression. This is where and how we were our native pure. And see now, the needs for Native Americans to claim that and how we are not as exceptions is also increasing value, because we're being forced to be not native system, which is the republic. It is most probable, it is most practical to take counter theory position per the known being and having been self-valued criminally foreign influence databases and uses of them since before our founding parents were born, since before computers, that are relevant to what is simultaneously where logic and opinions and convictions are fronts to mandated law outside of courts. So, for example, it is evidence how they left out these whole times all these problems with the police and things like that. They leave out the other police forms. They leave out how the investigators, and vetting, and investigations of that is originally still recorded clear as day, being and having been employed as victim roles with a human fact-cheating nature breaching organized crime method. Worse than war crimes will cause slavery. A breaching method. What's hurting black people now? Unacceptable standards and means to them and value nature systems. Not just allotments, but value treatments because they're all ulterior from that value progression system /S system that is the only one that is tied to everything at once, and as what determines and why. For example, the temporary positive of an individual group and species distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously has itself that identity value progression. Excuse me, which we are obligated per science to agree is at least the equivalent of the identity of the volume of the body of forever, which is increasing now, and it is more finite than three identities of zero. See, each of the sciences have experts of knowledge, but we're going to examine how each of the sciences, individually grouped and together, they maintain victims such a way where fact-cheating nature all victim predators. Same thing with the branches of government. See, we have to examine the proofs, which is how they're preventing mandated law. WFSB recorded, they confessed, recorded. This is where, when we start talking about what really happens and happened with bad locations and things like that, it shows how our own was guilty, where other nations are guilty of things they all ignore, but they have more and more relevance to where they had and have the only context where we are fact-cheating nature to counter or avert things like all that associated with the threats with nuclear weapons and, here, there, fake positive treatments, fake science, offensively pretending other, all positive and negative things in collusion with all locations, areas, states. Never, that's evidence when they make opinions about what caused slavery. They're recorded, these are interbranch, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously by a breaching method. And with everyone in collusion, with keeping them needed to hide the same finite, active, progressive lies. Clear as day, they used black people and white people as kids. That has them as predators now as adults. But I could show how they're just victims being forced to collusion, but they want to have and need to have me argue about people that I don't even know if they're actually police, but I'm pretty sure, because these are people involved with, they're proven federal criminals. They also pretend I had conversations about certain things tied to this that weren't at all, and to discredit me in backgrounds. In other words, there were a whole bunch of motivations, natures, needs, interests, leverage against all opinions and perception. For example, where they leave out all the relevant evidences, like the other police forms involved with the police predicate acts delivery system roles, with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and a whole bunch of other nations reported how needing to hide life precautions, uses of campuses intercities connected, worse than interstates, because of the value of their database relationships. Because of the value, not just to the lie progression, not just to the styles of the liars, arrays of breaching screen and tool, weapon, pretending other, will cause Jim Crow laws. Victim predators, by a breaching screen, by a breaching method. We're going to refer to it as a predicate acts delivery system method. We're going to counter it as we're going to refer to it as an archetypal criminal enterprise, a predicate acts delivery system method. We're going to focus on the predicate acts delivery system method itself. It's all right if people want to make opinions. If they want to have passions and emotions, follow mandated law, because they're forging names, switching names into branch, distinctly, non-distinctly in groups, while they're sequence shifting, because of how they know they could use and have been using the interbranch locations to hide how they were criminally foreign influenced. A whole bunch of nations at once, kept in keeping this the outcome. And natures of extortion of leaders, for how they have it, where they have our kids shared. Go to school there, ours here. On off campuses, police their roles with this identity theft / fraud, worst method. All victims child abused. If you want me to cheat you guys, if they want to have that nature of positive talk, then, you know, they have opinions only if you're going to be in collusion with it. That is worse than criminal incompetence, which spoke for and juxtapose, frustrations, uses of those frustrations, having been, that sustain. They have the jobs. They have to pretend they believe jobs mean what they don't. Offensively with passions and emotions. They have to plead. They have to, blame on other things themselves. The identity of the law, putting people in prisons that are recorded, run by people that are involved with all kinds of natures of child abuse, organized crime with the databases, and where and how they're using and having used investigators, and vetting identities, and investigations of that, to hide sequence shifts, to hide roles with identity thefts, frauds, method, as methods of motivations, nature's needs, interests, other uses of everyone around everyone. Per the investigators vetting identities. They pretend not to understand why they've been fabricating audio and video, people to fake communications with officers as adults, that when they were kids, I also never had a class with them. Attach me to a fake location. It's not like I didn't remember. I never had a class with Eric Mendez. There's a Anthony Agman, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with a domain family and with people associated with on and off Fox Connecticut News in downtown Hartford and the businesses next to them. Involved with them with predicate acts, with child abuses and identity thefts and frauds. And with others, with prosecutors and judges involved with crimes with kids with them and with doctors. And I never had anything to do with them. There's also women associated with them that were involved with them, attaching kids and their family members to fake locations, fake words with themselves and with others. They use the crime method of telling people to sue, but preventing us from getting, countering, there are names forging and switching, fabricating police reports, and juxtaposing the numbers of and natures of organized crime, and of family members and neighbors and all those people tied to those names needing to be used by me and by others per their uses of investigators. Originally, still, they're leading up to a 2006 case right before it, Thaddeus Grabowski, who was a co-defendant, a former director of the FBI in a 2006 district court case in New Haven, Connecticut. He's recorded. I didn't know who he was yet. He repeated. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated also other ways associated with the Mendez police, with right around the corner from Hartford, where Fox Connecticut News is. That also has recorded, confessed, demonstrated the people that answer their phones, also involved with the predicate acts of WFSB, also involved with they had playing softball together, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with people that in the past they pretended they knew me, so they filmed it, illusions, so they could pretend to know me, and where and how they were being coached by their influence. There were influences of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and interbranch with them at the same time. Now there's a Joshua Julian I never had anything to do with also. He's one of the ones involved with interbranch Facebook pages and inter-schools Facebook pages. They have male and female medical families, foreign and domestic. People tied to them like nurses. People tied to them as ones with badges. People involved with prison cliques of each age, even with the kids. And DCF involved with, this method that keeps victim predators. Where there's a vertical and horizontal aspect of the problem /S here. But that is exploited and maintained off all locations, not just campuses. This is private simultaneously. These are all identity of the ground. Jobs, titles, people, A through Z. Native Americans, A through Z first. No. Colonization. Colonists, A through Z. Now citizens, A through Z. So those are classes we're going to make with the programming. That have to be simultaneously valued. Positive also. Our identity as volume. Onto its identity of relation to itself and the value of that, science. It's clear as day, only liars speak when they bring up black or white or any culture. This is the invisible but still discernible that the ancients were led by. Hear many cry, many pray, give way. So this is also what is evidence. How people, people won't say, online. They'll speak online, but they won't take positions in relationship to specific facts. Same people that are pretending to be about facts, because of how they're only offensively in defense of where and how those identity of the ground locations were used and having been used to hide where and how. A breaching method used those identity of the ground locations since before anyone was born, per what is intercampuses of each age and age. So there are further people where the child campuses I went to that are adults now, further recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with child abuses, with child offenders proven, but more then and now. And because we have doctors that have badges and have involvements with agencies and their roles with identity of the ground locations, that I shouldn't even have to bring up. I shouldn't have to bring up people's names. But see, the interbranch been forging names, switching names. They have the media with a Trantolo and Trantolo, recorded, confessed, demonstrated where they're doing crimes against kids and their families, multi-front, where they have sustained sequence shifts, evidence fabrication, fabricating audio and video, where they have rights to do that, where the news has rights to lie legitimately. They've been doing it illegitimately. They did it leading up to and in a 2006 district court case with former director of the FBI and his co-defendants, 3 of them who had roles with predicate acts also, with databases, with kids on off the campuses I went to as a kid. and with their roles with private school kids, and with their roles with the video project I did. Now this is the police chief, his daughter. I don't know, never met her. People that from my school associated with her husband, maybe pretended a couple times. I was never had a problem with them. You know what I'm saying? But the police chief, and one years ago with the same house, and also did how they keep victims. Also brought up by over the last couple of months, the Wethersfield police have been influenced, tricked, persuaded to further roles with crime methods with phones. That also people associated with AT&T, with careers that already had their careers, with what they call law, identities of law, involved with all kinds of, I don't know, all the people on, those are all strangers I barely know, on off Two-Rod Highway, associated with a Phil Cololo. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the people associated with Joshua Julian, with the Facebook, with the child campuses, with the proven child offender leaders, but further with the kids, all kinds of, through time, connected other natures of organized crime, even more sexual and more medical, and interbranch. These are interbranch family members. And they have other nations and overt criminal enterprises and the witness protection programs, direct and indirect ties to Wethersfield and to the FBI in the area, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated how kept victim predators. So that's evidence. See, but we have to get the names forging and switching into branch. What is evidence is that, and how they pretend not to realize that how other natures of law, other identities of the law are mixed with the police. When we make fact-sheet nature about their criminality, other people are associated with the criminality, not from those locations. Those courts are kept needing to hide life progressions for what they are recorded and involved with intercampuses through time, intercities connected. And then in the World Trade Center attack, and right before it, this is foreign and domestic military. Their roles with systems, insights into systems, and voting locations roles. They have Wethersfield town offices associated with people in the Britain, for example. This is and all along routes. And they have state police, training of state police. They have training of the FBI. They have the training of the police forms, criminally foreign influence. They have uses of database relationships, of logic, criminally foreign influence, delusions, raw. These are easy things to discern. But we have people offensively pretending to be against racism and things like that because of their roles, hiding life progressions, and how the people with the prisons tied to them, for example, they are kept needing to hide the same life progressions for themselves, their family members, everyone around them. This is what the identity ground locations were built to exploit. That theater, where individual, finite, is separated from the valued system, and that's valued by it. So they can have roles with that. Styles can't afford logic, right? So we have worse than criminal incompetence and juxtaposed natures plural, of bad things that with influences over all identity ground locations, including the medical locations. So this is where they are kept victims. And they need them to stay victims. And they need them to say all alternatives. Inclusion what keeps victims. And that keeps everyone victim. To care for we don't just go and give a parade, that's great for their spirit. But back it up with not collusion with the racketeering, with the identities of security and of the law associated with these places. That's critical to their roles with the medical families, foreign and domestic, sick with the kids, with all kinds of sick readings of statutes. And like pretending they're about recidivism, all kinds of sick things they have with statutes against innocent people. Now, there are courts and our police forms and their family members leading up to the Sandy Hook attack. And in it, there are also ones involved with all these other nations, with what leading up to the World Trade Center had and has Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, involved also with predicate acts on and off Trinity College. So, but we have names forging and switching. Also, for how they're using the identity of the ground locations, where they use opinions and convictions in relationship to what everyone heard. And this is where courts have been making allegations against people criminally unconsciously because they've been fabricating audio and video, because their identity of the ground locations have been roles with it, where and how correlation nature needs to make the words short. The science of the individual forbids free speech and integrity, while it is forced to glorify all exceptions, the exception nature employed to keep that the outcome. You know, it's not hard to discern what caused slavery. What's keeping it hard is collusion with illusion and pretending others are tied to this names forging and switching because they're having exploited this. People from Trinity College and from Central Connecticut State University and Interbranch, they confessed and recorded what they will demonstrate that. They sequence shift, for example. So now, if we say it other way, if we don't get to do that, you can't see all the rest they did too, because they've been fabricating audio and video. And this is where an individual needs to speak for where and how other individuals are prevented free speech. And this is also where and how there are black and white people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved when I was a kid with where and how investigators, and vetting identity were used, where they don't let you know everyone's names, but they're pretending to film things. And they're having people perceive things, like associated with DACA. And one of the black men, when he was a kid, then I never saw him, then he came out of the state judicial branch offices. Now these are the people involved with predicate acts with WFSB, who faked conversations with me, who sequence shift also, who attached me and other kids to fake locations, fake ties to doctors, fake ties to fake medical diagnosis as kids and as adults. These are people forging names, switching names with they have racketeering they're involved with all kinds of through time with the locations, other locations, but then also how with the locations, with the medical locations, because they have been using those locations to fabricate evidences into databases, for where and how the courts and all tied to them are kept needing to hide lipoaggressions, are kept needing to hide how that was exploited with all identity of the ground locations. They can't defend themselves and afford what is actually recorded to be discerned. So they've been fabricating things through time, attaching lies to everything truth. So they also have roles with child abuses where they have the timed people with ad placements on the networks involved with it. This is identity theft fraud still. What is Jim Crow law is about? It's about worse than criminal incompetence of identities of the law used remotely. Also, evidence is their takes on James Madison and where and how they have. The proofs of this restricted, so they have it delayed, so they can keep pretending because they have the identities of the campuses maintained, originally and still, victims maintained as victim predators from off the campuses. And see, but that having been maintained, the campuses have standards, have fact-cheating nature, frustrated reactions that already were and having been employed, that were already conformed to evil that has nothing to do with the juxtaposed other natures of evil. Maintain self-value effectively. As is the simple but just extensive subject of American history. There's also evidence people who know the most about names of things that bad things were done to, like against people who are black with the laws. They're leaving out, that's why they're leaving out how those laws were forcing everyone to do that, sickly distinctly. Leaving out how it is done. By and pretending by blaming it on other people. And so where and how that is, like, we have to examine how that's where it's so easy to discern the physical delusions and the criminally foreign influence premises treatments and uses of them remotely of each branch of government, of every modern nation when they make opinions in relationship to what, because they're shock and awe that we could all learn and they could learn is maintained we could discern it being and having been maintained. Forgiveness is not to give up, but to be able to counter that which has everyone pretending passions and emotions. So no one who's going to demonstrate how everyone's involved with sequence shifts. Everyone's involved with exploitations of the perfect world having been forsaken, where their logic is, where their facts are, their fact-cheating nature, where their integrity is. Everyone's speaking about others, and when the bad kids do bad things and there's shootings in areas all the time, they left out what led up to that. These are some other roles with another nature of another method of predicate acts delivery system, of predicate acts, of organized crime, of worse than war crimes, that is simultaneously as subtle and overt, and how it is in subtle and how it is in covert is maintained to collusion. This is not hard. So they won't follow mandated law because the courts, they want everyone to sue, like CNN. It's supposed to follow mandated law because they have sources that are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with child abuses, identity thefts, frauds, fabricating audio and video, crimes with cases, crimes with depositions, with the lies they told in the depositions, and the one officer in the deposition reportedly one of the co-defendants of former director of the FBI. We have to get the transcript, but he pretended he didn't realize what had been proven in a court case, which is also his roles with the Leahy family, with various natures of courts, and their family members involved with the same house/S, involved with predicate acts with them that are fact-cheating nature oriented, and that extended became way worse. That per also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with connections between untimely deaths and uses of those identity ground locations for other mixed natures of organized crime, and the phenomena of all those people having had confessions and demonstrations that all connect back to the same house. That is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, but involved with officers switching names, forging names, roles, with child offenders, and with the name Sullivan, which is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with interbranch, involved with predicate acts, with people on and off Hartford courts, on and off New Britain Superior Court involved with on and off Central Connecticut State University predicate acts with on and off Lena's Pizza, foreign and domestic overt criminal enterprises, and some people on the child sex offender registry, and associated with Joshua Julian, further with Facebook, and involved with them, with such, and with people who answer the phones at the schools, and the lawyers, making up fake conversations. I asked to report specific things, way lesser than what is actually recorded, and the confessions regarding the untimely death rolls, was in all kinds of things with a Scalora family, on and off child campuses, interages in nature, and their roles with predicate acts on and off CCSU. The other interbranch police have roles with methods where they switch names, forge names, pretend to make mistakes with police reports from different departments. All kinds of changing narratives, forging, switching names again. Also, that's how the various natures of courts are involved. Not just dozens from the Britain Superior Court. Involved intercities with my town's campuses through time. Also with the Dillon family. Now, these are also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with this involved, with their involvements with people tied to the World Trade Center attack context, leading up to and in the Ninth Circuit Court next to it, and with their fact-cheating nature roles, identity theft, frauds roles. Now, these are also people that know my family, that lied to them, pretended to tried to entrap them too, through time. Like these are also people with the same house, and their extended family members involved with predicate acts with the child offenders now. Further with the principal child offenders campus then and now, and with these two Mendez police. Various natures of predicate acts, fake conversation made with the older Mendez police brother, and with the Wethersfield police chief. Also involved with this Dillon family. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with things they should have warned the past neighbor about, per them, but they were lying to them about me. These are people, these are the Dillon family, and they're sequence shifting too, because this came before 3 times. 2 times they overtly lied about what happened when they were, and that's also involved with their judges and doctors and their patients involved with their social roles with child sex offenders, also on off the Wethersfield Library, and other medical offenders in collusion, overt criminal enterprises, abuses of girls and of boys in group. And they do that in relationship to where people are going to be timed. We're going to walk in the thing. They'll pretend they have integrity with Washington, D.C. You're going to have this. They have none. I have 2 speech teachers. The only reason I wouldn't even have to stay back. But I have 2 speech teachers. If I did that, I wouldn't have figured out what had the unfortunate but, great means on the phenomena of means to experience and to observe and to study unwillingly, which is part of it. The people that are involved with things going on with locations, it's because of how live progressions. It's because of how the branches of government, investigators, and vetting identities, hundreds of nations at once, they are kept needing to hide live progressions by using investigations, by using investigators, by using crime scenes to hide their roles with one, as one. It is a crime scene, all identity ground location. Since before cars, as what is the suburbs, let alone what was designed to be sickly distinctly, unfathomably, righteously claim-free anyway. We have to get back to the child abuse method, which is juxtaposed natures of organized crime, not just child abuses, and methods of it and motivations of it. We'll see how the whole systems with mayors and everything like that, they keep victim predators. They keep identity theft, frauds, roles. Everyone speaking to other, their sequence shift roles. Faking passions and emotions. Stacking illusions and people appearing to be in collusion with it. In other words. And uses of that. Now there's also the pattern of people involved with forensic locations that are involved with a case in the past. Well, a case /S in the past also involved with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso. That a Dillon family is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated involved with a Fienza family and people on and off the state judicial branch offices who are also involved with federal criminals since before that was proven. And then they were further involved with further natures of organized crime, leading up to a 2006 case /S that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. These are also people that are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and witnessed, involved with on and off the World Trade Center attack contacts right before it, in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers, leading up to and in that context, the World Trade Center itself and that court was involved with sequence shifts and with narratives, with illusions, with uses of other people's names. Now there are people associated with Joshua Julian. I mean, and also a Joshua Stryker on and off Trinity College, involved with the Joshua Julian, involved with interbranch families and foreign families and overt criminal enterprise and the witness protection programs tied to the town and the federal criminals that were involved with pension thefts, drugs, with the on and off the job sites and with kids, evidence, falsified police reports and stuff like that. Before that, they were blaming other things and people on that, and then they were pretending that's just elections crimes law. They could just say that stuff, but they were doing that through kids when I was a kid. As the people, I don't know. Only in context they sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm their roles with investigators, fabricating audio and video with them, and they'll agree to this. But you have to ask them the right way because of their roles also with Trinity College. I had no conversation with them on Trinity College. I only know them in context where investigation of that is originally and still simultaneously evidence where and how black is valued beyond what will be allowed voice by people who are pretending to be about other. They have to do that as a style of liar. So they pretend to be against racism. These are actual logistical impositions and names that are having isms propagated, self-cultivated as the factory nature in relationship to what is a predicate acts delivery system method and lack of reliefs. Lack of reliefs! We all just chant that. It's different. But we don't chant it to what makes less finite distinctions, less active quality, less progressive quality, less sequence true, less identity, native pure. So nature shows. Sometimes it rains. Sometimes it snows. And so it goes. Bach sings. It tells us things. So we're going to, who will believe and help me set up for New York City? You'll be, people know, or if you teach people, we're going to make the course. I know, so have to set up the environment and all that. But we're going to make the classes of, for example, native, colonization, citizen. We have three branches of government. because that's manifest across the world because of what was revealed, not just invented. In fact, the ancients revealed that only what is revealed.